The kiss lasted less than 2 seconds, but it detonated the room. Gasps rippled through the cathedral as Naomi Carter rose on her toes and pressed her lips to the groom's mouth, right there at the altar, right there in front of 300 stunned guests and a wall of flashing cameras. Someone screamed. Someone else dropped a phone. The organ faltered mid-note, the sound collapsing into a sharp, discordant silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Not the bride in white standing frozen beside them. Not the officiant gripping his book like it might save him. Not even the groom himself. Seo Jinwoo did not pull away immediately. That was the moment the chaos truly began. "Hey, what is this?" someone shouted from the front row. Naomi stepped back before security could reach her, her heart hammering so violently she thought she might faint. Her palms were slick, her knees weak, but she lifted her chin anyway. If she hesitated now, everything she'd risked to get here would be for nothing. The bride finally found her voice. "Are you insane?" she shrieked, clutching her bouquet like a weapon. "Get her out! Jinwoo, tell them to get her out!" Whispers exploded around the room. Phones rose higher. The livestream counter on a massive screen at the back ticked upward by the thousands. Seo Jinwoo raised one hand. Not loudly, not angrily. Just enough. The room fell into a stunned, breathless hush. "Give her the phone," he said calmly. The words weren't addressed to Naomi. They were aimed at his head of security, who stiffened instantly and moved toward the bride instead. "What?" the bride snapped. "Why would you?" "Now," Jinwoo repeated, his tone sharpening like a blade drawn an inch farther from its sheath. Security reached for the bride's clutch. She clutched it tighter, her face draining of color. "Don't touch my things." Naomi swallowed. This was the point of no return. "She's been cheating on you," Naomi said, her voice cutting through the tension, clear despite the tremor in her chest. "For over a year." A wave of shocked murmurs rolled through the pews. The bride laughed, brittle and loud. "This is ridiculous. Who are you? Do you know how much you'll pay for this stunt?" Naomi met her gaze. "Ask him about Director Park." The name landed like a dropped glass. Seo Jinwoo's eyes darkened, something unreadable passing through them. "Unlock the phone," he said. The bride shook her head violently. "Jinwoo, this woman is lying. She's nobody. She's just..." The screen behind them flickered to life. Messages, photos, hotel receipts. A familiar male face far too close to the bride's, his hand unmistakably hers. A collective gasp swept the cathedral. Someone whispered, "Isn't that his partner?" Another voice followed, louder. "That's Park Dong-hyun." The bride staggered back as if struck. "This is fake," she whispered, but her voice cracked. "You think I'd be stupid enough to..." Naomi didn't let her finish. "The dates match the weeks you said you were visiting your aunt in Busan. The transfers match the accounts you said were wedding expenses." Seo Jinwoo stepped away from the altar. Every camera tracked him. He stopped in front of the bride, his expression eerily calm. "How long?" Silence. "How long?" he repeated, softer now, which was somehow worse. Tears welled in the bride's eyes, spilling over as her shoulders shook. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. You were always working, always choosing the company over me. Dong-hyun was there." That was it. Seo Jinwoo exhaled slowly, then turned to the officiant. "The wedding is suspended." The words detonated louder than any shout. "What?" his mother cried out from the front row. "Jinwoo, think about what you're doing." He didn't look at her. "Escort her out," he said to security, nodding toward the bride. The bride screamed his name as they took her arms, heels scraping against marble. "You can't do this to me, after everything I've done for you." The doors slammed behind her, leaving behind stunned silence and the echo of a ruined future. Naomi stood there, suddenly hyper-aware of where she was, of the fact that every lens in the room had turned toward her. She had expected to be dragged out next. Instead, Seo Jinwoo turned to her. Up close, he was even more intimidating, taller than she'd realized. Eyes sharp, assessing, carrying the weight of a man used to controlling rooms like this one. "You knew," he said quietly. Naomi nodded once. Yes. How? I was hired to coordinate the reception, she said. I saw things, heard things, I checked. His jaw tightened. And you decided to destroy my wedding. She held his gaze. I decided you deserved the truth. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, shockingly, he turned back toward the altar. We will continue the ceremony, he announced. A stunned beat passed. With a different bride. The room erupted. What? His mother shouted, standing now. Have you lost your mind? Seo Jinwoo reached for Naomi's hand. Her breath hitched as his fingers closed around hers, firm and steady. She will marry me. Naomi's eyes widened. What? He leaned in just enough for only her to hear. If we walk away separately, this becomes a feeding frenzy. If we stand together, I control the narrative. I didn't agree to. You exposed a betrayal that could have destroyed my company, he said quietly. I'll protect you, but you have to trust me. 1 year, that's all. The officiant stammered. Sir, are you sure? Yes, Seo Jinwoo said firmly. Naomi's mind spun. Cameras, lawyers, consequences she hadn't even imagined. But if she said no now, everything she'd done would turn into spectacle instead of purpose. Her fingers trembled as she squeezed his hand. 1 year, she echoed. The vows resumed in stunned disbelief. Later, in the back of a black sedan speeding through the city, the silence between them was thick enough to suffocate. You'll have separate quarters, Seo Jinwoo said, staring out the window. There will be rules, boundaries. This is a contract, nothing more. Naomi nodded, her pulse still racing. I understand. You'll be protected from my family and the press, he continued. In return, you present yourself as my wife in public. No interviews without approval. She hesitated, and after 1 year. He finally looked at her. We go our separate ways. Naomi swallowed. Okay. The city lights streaked past as the car climbed toward the penthouse that would now be her home. Neither of them noticed that somewhere behind them, a man watched the live stream replay again and again, his lips curling into a slow, resentful smile. The applause hadn't fully died when the doors at the back of the hall burst open. Reporters. Cameras, microphones, flashing lights that turned the cathedral into a battlefield. Evan didn't flinch. He tightened his grip around Mara's fingers, his voice low, controlled. Smile, and don't say a word unless I ask you something. Her heart was still racing from the kiss, from the chaos, from the way the former bride had been dragged out screaming threats. You're acting like this was planned. It is now, he said. They walked down the aisle together while chaos erupted behind them. Evan's family stood frozen, his aunt pale with rage, his uncle whispering furiously into a phone. Somewhere near the front, his mother sat stiff-backed, eyes sharp and calculating, already measuring the damage. Outside, the press surged forward. Mr. Kwon, who is she? Is this a stunt? Was the bride cheating? Mara's heels nearly caught on the steps. Evan steadied her without looking down. Get in the car, he said calmly to his security team. A black sedan cut through the crowd like a blade. Doors opened. They were inside. Silence dropped instantly. Only then did Evan turn to her. You're not shaking, he observed. I am, Mara said, just internally. The corner of his mouth lifted. Good, it means you're still thinking. The car moved, soul blurred past the tinted windows. You replaced your bride with a stranger, Mara said quietly. Your family will destroy me. They won't, he replied. They'll try, but they won't succeed. She studied him. You speak like someone who's done this before. Controlled disasters are still disasters, Evan said. But at least this one is useful. Useful, she echoed. He met her gaze fully now. You saved me from a public and financial collapse. My former fiancé was leaking internal data. If that marriage had gone through, I'd have lost everything within a year. Mara swallowed. I didn't know that. I know, he said. That's why I trust you more than anyone else in that building. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a towering glass penthouse. Inside, the elevator ride was silent except for the soft hum of ascent. When the doors opened, Mara stepped into a space that felt nothing like a home. Glass walls, steel accents, art chosen for value, not warmth. Evan removed his jacket, loosened his tie. "Let be clear," he said. "This marriage is not romantic, it is strategic." She folded her arms. "I never asked to marry you." "And yet you did," he replied evenly. "So now we decide how this ends without destroying either of us." She waited. 1 year, Evan continued. Public marriage, private separation, separate bedrooms, no physical expectations. In exchange, I protect you, financially, legally, socially. And after 1 year, Mara asked. "We divorce quietly," he said. "You walk away untouched." She laughed once sharp. "Untouched, my face is already everywhere." He nodded. "Which is why walking away tomorrow would ruin you." Silence stretched. Finally, she said, "You're very sure I'll agree." "I'm sure you're practical," Evan replied. "You walked into a wedding and kissed a stranger to expose a lie. You value truth and survival." She looked around the cold penthouse. "You live like a man who doesn't expect warmth." Something flickered in his eyes, gone in a second. "Do we have a deal?" he asked. Mara exhaled slowly. 1 year, and I keep my autonomy." "You'll have more freedom than you ever imagined," Evan said. "Except one thing." "What?" "You will never contradict me publicly," he said. "If there is a disagreement, it happens in private." She met his stare. "And you won't control my voice." A pause, then a nod. "Agreed." They shook hands. That night, Mara slept in a guest room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She didn't sleep much. Neither did Evan. The next morning began with noise. Stylists, assistants, lawyers, phones vibrating endlessly. Mara stood in front of a mirror, while a woman adjusted her hair with trembling hands. "Smile softly," the stylist whispered. "The world wants a fairy tale." Mara met her own reflection. She looked like someone else entirely. Evan entered the room mid-chaos. He wore a dark suit, immaculate, composed. 10 minutes, he said. "Press conference is live internationally." The stylist stepped back, bowing. Mara turned. "What do I say?" "The truth," Evan replied, "but only the parts that protect us." On stage, the lights were blinding. Questions came fast. "Did you plan this? Are you pregnant? Was this a revenge kiss?" Evan raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. "My former fiancé betrayed me," he said calmly. "Personally and professionally. I discovered the truth moments before the ceremony." Gasps rippled through the room. "And her?" a reporter asked, pointing at Mara. "She chose courage," Evan said, "when no one else would." Mara felt her throat tighten. A reporter leaned forward. "Ms. Carter, why did you kiss him?" Mara stepped closer to the microphone. "Because I saw a man about to marry a lie," she said, "and I couldn't stay quiet." The room erupted. Another voice shouted, "Is this love?" She glanced at Evan. He didn't stop her. "It wasn't," she said honestly, "but love doesn't always start clean." Evan continued seamlessly. "Effective immediately, I am terminating all partnerships connected to the breach. Legal action is underway." Someone yelled, "What about your business partner?" Evan's eyes hardened. "His assets are frozen as of this morning." That afternoon, the world exploded. Videos of the kiss hit 40 million views in less than 12 hours. That night, Evan stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear. "You underestimated her," he said quietly. On the other end, a man laughed nervously. "You always do," Evan replied, "which is why you're finished." He ended the call. Behind him, Mara watched silently. "You destroyed him," she said. "He destroyed himself," Evan answered. She hesitated. "You didn't have to protect me in the press." "Yes, I did," he replied. You're my wife now, which means anyone who touches you answers to me. For the first time since the altar, she felt it. Not safety. Power. Weeks passed. Public appearances, forced smiles, private conversations that grew less sharp. Late-night talks in the kitchen, shared coffee, unexpected laughter. One night, during a blackout, Mara found Evan sitting alone on the floor, back against the window, city lights flickering back on. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "My grandmother raised me. She thinks you saved my soul." Mara smiled softly. "Did I?" He finally met her eyes. "You reminded me I still had one." Somewhere in the city, someone watched their rise with resentment. An envelope slid under a door. Inside, photos, altered, dangerous. And a single message. "You stole her place. Now pay for it." The game wasn't over. Not even close. If you're still watching, this is where everything begins to burn. So make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, because the next part changes everything. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of machinery and the distant echo of sirens below. The city of glass and steel stretched endlessly beneath them, indifferent to the chaos that had erupted inside one cathedral-like hall an hour earlier. Arya stood with her hands folded in front of her, spine straight, heart racing so fast she was sure Leon could hear it. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked like someone else, still wearing the wedding gown meant for another woman, lipstick slightly smudged, eyes too sharp for someone who had just detonated a scandal. Leon didn't look at her. He loosened his tie with one hand, jaw tight, the muscles in his neck flexing like coiled steel. When the elevator doors finally slid open, he stepped out first, motioning for his security team to stay back. "Give us space," he said quietly. The doors closed behind them. The penthouse was vast, minimalist, all glass and muted tones. No warmth, no clutter, just control. Arya took 2 steps inside before she felt it, the pressure of his presence finally turning toward her. "Sit," Leon said. She obeyed, lowering herself onto the edge of a leather couch. He didn't sit. He stood across from her, arms crossed, eyes cold but burning underneath. "You had no right," he said. Arya swallowed. "I know. You humiliated my family. You derailed a merger worth billions. You turned my wedding into international spectacle." "I know," she repeated, voice quieter now. "Then explain," he snapped. "Explain why a stranger would risk everything to do what you did." She lifted her chin. "Because someone had to." His eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer." Arya took a breath, steadying herself. "I coordinate events for a living. Weddings, galas, corporate showcases. I notice things, patterns, people who don't belong where they are." She met his gaze fully now. "Your fiancée wasn't nervous because she loved you. She was nervous because she was about to lose control." Leon's jaw tightened. "I saw the way she watched your business partner, not like a colleague, like someone afraid of being caught." Silence thickened the room. "I didn't plan to kiss you," Arya said. "That part was impulsive, but I did plan to stop the ceremony." "You could have spoken to me," Leon said. "You wouldn't have listened," she replied gently. "Not without proof, and I only had seconds." He stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes, anger giving way to something sharper. Calculation. "You said you had evidence," he said. Arya reached into the small clutch still hanging from her wrist and pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it. "I overheard a call during the rehearsal dinner," she said. "She didn't know I spoke Korean." Leon's head snapped up. "You do." "Enough." She handed him the phone. He listened without moving, eyes darkening with every word. His knuckles whitened around the device. When the recording ended, the silence that followed felt dangerous. Leon exhaled slowly. "So it wasn't just infidelity." "No," Arya said. "It was sabotage." He set the phone down with precision. "You just saved my company." "And ruined your life," she said quietly. A corner of his mouth twitched. You have no idea how many enemies I already had. He finally sat down, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. My grandmother is upstairs, he said after a moment. She watched everything. Arya's heart sank. I'm sorry. She asked to meet you. Arya stiffened. Now. Yes. They rode another elevator, this one slower, guarded by two men who looked at Arya like she was a live wire. The room they entered was warm, softly lit. An elderly woman lay propped up against pillows, oxygen humming quietly beside her. Despite her frailty, her eyes were sharp and assessing. So, the woman said in Korean, you're the girl who stopped my grandson from ruining his life. Arya bowed instinctively. I'm sorry for the shock I caused. The woman waved her hand dismissively. Shock is temporary, betrayal lasts. She studied Arya carefully. Why did you do it? Arya hesitated, then answered honestly. Because no one deserves to be trapped in a lie. The woman smiled faintly. Good answer. Leon stiffened. Halmione. Let me finish, she interrupted. She reached out, and Arya stepped forward, taking the fragile hand gently. My grandson lives surrounded by power, the woman said. People bow, people lie, people smile with knives behind their backs. Her grip tightened surprisingly strong. But today you acted without fear. That is rare. Arya felt tears burn her eyes. The woman turned to Leon. Marry her. Arya froze. Leon stood. What? You need protection, the woman said calmly. And so does she. Arya's breath caught. Ma'am, I don't. This is not romance, the woman said. This is strategy, a contract, 1 year, no expectations beyond loyalty. Leon's eyes locked on Arya. You don't have to, he said quietly. She searched his face. The man who had been untouchable an hour ago now looked human, cornered. If I walk away, Arya said, they'll destroy me. Yes, Leon said, they will. She inhaled deeply. Then I'll stay. The next morning, cameras flooded the press hall. Arya sat beside Leon, hands folded, posture calm despite the storm waiting outside the doors. Remember, Leon murmured, leaning close. They want cracks, don't give them any. She nodded. I won't. The doors opened. Flashbulbs exploded. A reporter shouted. Mr. Han, was the wedding a publicity stunt? Another yelled. Who is she to you really? Leon stepped forward, voice steady. My wife. Gasps rippled through the room. Arya rose beside him. She acted to protect me, Leon continued, and I stand by her. A reporter turned to Arya. Did you kiss him to steal his fortune? Arya met the camera head-on. I kissed him to stop a lie, she said. If that offends you, imagine how betrayal feels. The room erupted. And somewhere in the chaos, Leon glanced at her, not with calculation this time, but with something dangerously close to respect. The elevator doors closed with a muted chime, sealing them inside a quiet that felt heavier than the crowd they'd left behind. Ethan stood beside her, jacket off now, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The man who'd commanded an entire ballroom minutes ago looked different up close, tired, controlled, dangerous in the way someone becomes when they've survived too many storms without ever breaking. Maya hugged her arms around herself. The adrenaline that had carried her through the altar, through the confrontation, through the cameras, was finally wearing off. You can still walk away, she said softly, staring at the mirrored wall. Before we get to the penthouse. Ethan didn't look at her. No, he replied. If you walk out now, they'll eat you alive, my family, the board, the press. So this is protection, she said, half a question. This is containment, he corrected, for both of us. The elevator stopped. The doors slid open to a sprawling penthouse washed in city lights. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Seoul's skyline glittering like a sea of glass and gold. The space was immaculate, too immaculate, like a place no one actually lived in. Ethan gestured her inside. Rules, he said immediately. We make them now while we're calm. She turned to face him. You think I'm calm. A ghost of a smile flickered. Fair point. He moved to the kitchen island, poured himself a glass of water, and leaned back against the counter. 1 year, public marriage, separate bedrooms, no physical relationship unless mutually agreed and documented. He paused. No surprises. Maya blinked. Documented. My lawyers will draft terms. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You really are impossible. And you kissed a stranger at his wedding, he shot back. Seems we both have issues with impulse. The silence stretched. Finally she nodded. Fine, 1 year. Good, he said. Tomorrow morning we face the press. Her stomach dropped. Tomorrow. They're already outside, he replied calmly. If we don't speak, others will speak for us. She sank onto the sofa. I've managed weddings. I've handled drunk brides, angry mothers, runaway grooms. I have never had to explain why I hijacked one. You'll do fine, Ethan said. You speak when you believe in something. That's dangerous, but effective. She looked up at him. And what do you believe in? He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Control. That night, Maya barely slept. She lay in a guest bedroom that was bigger than her old apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment she'd stepped forward at the altar. The look on the bride's face, the gasp from the crowd, Ethan's hand gripping hers, not in anger but in shock. What had possessed her? Morning came fast. Stylists arrived, publicists, lawyers, a whirlwind of voices and fabric and instructions. Maya sat in front of a mirror as someone adjusted her hair. Someone else chose a dress, elegant, understated, nothing like a scandal. Ethan entered halfway through, already dressed in a charcoal suit, phone pressed to his ear. No, he said sharply. Release the statement after the conference, not before. He hung up and met her eyes in the mirror. You look, he stopped himself, appropriate. She raised an eyebrow. High praise. He sighed. I'm not good at this part. The human part, she asked. He didn't answer. The press conference room buzzed with anticipation. Cameras clicked nonstop as they took their seats. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears, but she lifted her chin, shoulders back. Ethan spoke first, calm, measured. Yesterday's events were unexpected, he said, but not without reason. A reporter shouted, was the kiss planned? No, Ethan replied, but it was necessary. Murmurs rippled. Maya took the microphone. I didn't kiss him for attention, she said, voice steady. I kissed him because the woman he was about to marry was betraying him with his business partner. I had proof. Gasps, flashbulbs exploded. Another reporter. Why not speak up instead of disrupting the ceremony? Maya met the camera. Because sometimes truth needs interruption. Polite warnings get buried. This couldn't. Ethan glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. Questions flew about their relationship, about the contract marriage rumors already leaking. Ethan addressed them head-on. Yes, our marriage began under unusual circumstances, but it is real, and it will continue. The conference ended in chaos. By afternoon, the fallout hit. Ethan's former partner was escorted out of headquarters. Accounts frozen. Investigations launched. Maya watched from the penthouse as Ethan paced during a call, voice low and lethal. You underestimated me, he said into the phone. That was your last mistake. He ended the call and leaned against the window, eyes closed. Maya approached slowly. You okay? He laughed softly. I just dismantled a 10-year partnership and exposed a woman I once trusted to the entire country. She winced. So no. He opened his eyes. You didn't have to do what you did. Yes, she said quietly. I did. Days blurred into weeks. They learned each other's rhythms. The way Ethan drank his coffee black at dawn. The way Maya hummed when she was nervous. Arguments flared, about interviews, about boundaries, about the way he tried to shield her from everything. I don't need a bodyguard, she snapped one night. You're married to one of the most powerful men in the country, he replied. You need 5. Moments softened, too. Late-night conversations. Shared laughter over terrible takeout. Grief when Ethan's grandmother passed, her hand squeezing Maya's as she whispered, "Take care of him." 6 months later, Ethan stood before his board and resigned. The announcement stunned the media. Maya watched him on screen, heart-pounding, as he said, "Power without purpose is hollow. I'm stepping away to build something that actually matters." That night, she found him alone on the balcony. "You're really doing this," she said. He nodded. "Because of you." She shook her head. "No, because you chose to." He turned to her. "Then stay, choose me." Before she could answer, a knock echoed through the penthouse. An envelope lay on the floor. Inside, photos, fake but convincing, a demand scrawled in red ink. Maya's hands trembled. "They're trying to destroy me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we end this, permanently." And for the first time since the wedding, fear gave way to something stronger. Resolve. The silence after the gala speech felt heavier than applause. Lena stood on the edge of the stage, fingers still curled around the microphone, heart racing as the room absorbed her words. She hadn't planned to say that much. She hadn't planned to look at Adrian the way she just had, open, unguarded, real. For a moment, the elite crowd of donors, executives, and socialites simply stared. Then applause broke out. Not polite, not restrained. It rolled through the hall in waves, people standing, clapping with expressions that ranged from admiration to surprise to something close to disbelief. Adrian didn't move right away. He stayed where he was, eyes fixed on Lena like the room had disappeared. When he finally joined her on stage, he didn't reach for the microphone. He reached for her hand. The gesture was small, but it landed like a confession. Cameras flashed instantly. Lena felt the familiar spike of panic. Media, interpretation, headlines. But this time, Adrian squeezed her hand, grounding her. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly, leaning in so only she could hear. "If this feels like too much." She looked at him, really looked at him. Not the billionaire heir, not the former CEO, just a man who had unraveled and rebuilt himself in front of her. "I want to stay," she said. "For once, I'm not doing this for appearances." His jaw tightened, emotion flickering across his face before he nodded. They walked off the stage together. Backstage, away from the noise, Lena finally exhaled. Her shoulders sagged as the adrenaline faded. "That speech," Adrian said. "You didn't have to say any of that." "I know," she replied, "but it was true." He studied her, hands in his pockets, posture tense. "You realize you just tied your name permanently to mine, to my past." She smiled faintly. "I think my name been tied to yours since the day I kissed you in front of 300 guests and half the internet." A short, surprised laugh escaped him. Then his phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. "It's happening," he said. Lena's stomach dropped. "What is?" "The last loose end," he replied. "The person who's been feeding rumors to the press, the one behind the fake documents. He's trying to sell a final story tonight." "Can we stop it?" Adrian met her gaze. "We already did. I just needed confirmation." He typed a short message, then slipped the phone back into his pocket. "It's over," he said. "He won't bother us again." Lena searched his face. "You're sure?" "Yes," he said calmly. "Because this time I didn't protect myself, I protected us." Something in his voice made her chest ache. They left the venue quietly, avoiding the press through a private exit. The city air was cool, the noise distant. Inside the car, silence settled between them, not awkward, not tense, just full. Adrian broke it first. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." He smiled, then grew serious. "Our contract ends next month." Lena nodded slowly. "I know." "I don't want to renew it," he said. Her heart skipped. "Neither do I." He turned to her fully. "Lena, I don't want terms or conditions or protection clauses." She held her breath. I want a choice, he continued. Made freely, with no cameras, no pressure, just honesty. The car stopped at a red light. Neon reflected across the windshield, painting his face in shifting colors. She reached out, touching his arm. Then here's my honesty. I didn't plan to fall for you. I didn't even like you at first. He smirked. I noticed. But somewhere between the lies, the chaos, and the quiet moments, she said softly, you became home. The light turned green. He didn't move the car right away. Instead, he leaned in and kissed her. Not the desperate, reckless kiss that started everything. Not the careful, public kiss for cameras. This one was slow, certain, chosen. 6 months later, the ring box felt heavier than it should have. Adrian stood on the balcony of their apartment, the city stretching endlessly below. He hadn't worn a suit in weeks. The foundation had grown faster than he expected. Real work, real impact. Lena stepped out behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You're going to drop that box if you keep staring at it, she teased. He laughed nervously. I've negotiated hostile takeovers with less anxiety. She stepped in front of him, eyes warm. Then stopped thinking like a CEO. He took a breath, dropped to one knee, and opened the box. The ring wasn't extravagant, just elegant, intentional. Lena Carter, he said, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. I don't want a contract, or an image, or a story people can sell. Her eyes filled instantly. I want a life, he continued. With arguments and laughter and mistakes and forgiveness. I want to choose you every day, even when it's hard. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, God, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, standing to pull her into his arms as she laughed through tears. This time, there were no cameras. Only the city, the future, and the quiet certainty that chaos had led them exactly where they needed to be. A year later, Lena stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Adrian rock their daughter gently in his arms. You're starring again, he murmured without looking up. She smiled. I'm remembering. Hopefully the good parts, he said. The kiss, she replied. The fear, the mess. He looked down at the baby, then back at her. I'd do it all again. Lena crossed the room, resting her head on his shoulder. So would I. And if you stayed until the end of this story, it means you believe, like they did, that sometimes the wrong moment leads to the right forever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories like this one. Your support helps keep these stories coming, and your comment might inspire the next one.